Now they have Eldritch Blast and they can scare people.
Or they find a sword and they're like, nope, that's metal.
They're like, nope, this one is not for me. I could feel it. There are better ways to go about this. Is there a devil I could sell my soul to?
Oh my god, that gave me an idea for a really just cheap, lazy, try-hardy multi-class of they accidentally find a Hexblade patron in the form of a metal weapon, and they pick it up and like, oh! And the Hexblade's like, nope, you touch me, nope. And they're like, no!
No takebacks.
And they have to like, it's like a buddy comedy between a druid and the sword he doesn't get along with.
Welcome to Monsters in Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Kevin Odie.
I'm Jared Bornagle.
And I'm Will Meldon.
And we'll be hanging out with you for a while to talk about anything and everything D&D related. This episode, we're taking a look at the Druid Warlock multiclass, Empyreans from the Monster Manual, and then another segment of Ask Monsters in Multiclass. So pull up a chair and stick around for a while.
All right, so our two classes today are the Druid and the Warlock. Druids are your full-casting, shape-shifting, nature-loving class. They get the wild shape ability that lets them turn into animals. Requirement to multiclass into is 13 in Wisdom. Warlocks are the oddest caster of the D&D realm. They have very few spell slots. They always cast at the highest spell level they can. All spells come back on a short rest, and more importantly, they get Eldritch Blast. The only good cantrip in any game ever. Usually they get their powers by entering into a pact with some greater entity, and the requirement to multiclass into it is a 13 in Charisma. So, first thoughts on the Druid Warlock multiclass. Let's give it to our resident Warlock lover, Will.
So, yeah, anytime you've got... I'm never, huge on double caster multi-classes, unless, they're a Warlock. So this is one of those examples where it's, perfect. You take the Druid who's lacking in stuff, namely the ability to cast Eldritch Blast, and then you add that. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of issues.
So you're currently playing a Druid. Do you find your cantrips to be pretty lacking?
Oh god, they're dog shit, man.
I think the main one you use is Chill Touch, generally?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that is exclusive to my subclass.
That is, yeah, that's a sport Druid thing.
I think this actually does have some mechanical viability in multiple realms, and role-playing wise, I think it's semi-interesting, but I don't know. We'll have to hash that out a little bit more.
Definitely. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
So this one's actually not clicking for me at all. I guess I'm not inspired by it. I'm not excited by it. Usually as I read through the different classes with the thought of putting them together, a bunch of different things firing off. Oh, we could try this and that might make this better. And it just didn't happen for this one. They feel like they're two very, very different classes. And the fact that it's two different spellcasting ability means they don't really build on each other that well. At best, my initial reaction is it seems like it gives you some versatility. You could sometimes play as a Warlock, and if the situation doesn't benefit from you being a Warlock, try out being a Druid.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's, I think, a lot of what you run into once you start getting into that realm of two full spellcasters with different spellcasting abilities. I mean, you just really are going to sacrifice a lot when you go into one over the other. So to me, the thing that I always try and find is what can we get out of a small dip into one or the other so that you don't really have to focus on the spellcasting ability. How important are the spells? There's a lot of spells that sometimes don't need the spellcasting modifier, or at least don't need a higher one. So little things like that are what I try to bring in for those. But I think I'm still with you on the overall, just I'm not excited by it immediately or anything.
So, Will, what do you like about it?
So what I do, honestly, Warlock. That's what I got. Some things that are interesting, and this is, once again, playing to the probably, black sheeps of both subclasses, are the Hexblade and the Spore features actually do gel pretty well together.
Yeah. I kind of thought that as well. Once you start taking a look at the melee capabilities of each, you wouldn't expect two full spellcasters to mesh so well together for a melee build, but they knock it out of the park. The Hexblade, of course, adds that Hexblade's Curse, lets you use your Charisma as a casting, as your attack bonus.
Well, that's Hex Warrior. Hexblade's Curse is
Oh.
you could gain a bonus to damage rolls against the cursed target. You go do your proficiency bonus. Your attack rolls crit on a 19 in addition to a 20, and if the target dies, you gain 10 hit points to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier.
Right.
Hex Warrior that's what allows you to bond to a weapon, and then when using that weapon, be able to use your Charisma for the attack roll and
right.
damage.
So in that type of build, you're definitely going to be focusing on that charisma, because really none of the Spore Druid's abilities need wisdom. It's kind of up to you how much you want to get out of the Druid. You're still going to have, at least something in wisdom, most likely at least 14. So you got +2 to your spell casting ability for any Druid spells. But I think you're really going to want to focus on the charisma for the Warlock, and then you're just getting all of the nice parts of the Spore Druid's wild shape, get those temp HP, and then the extra necrotic damage when you throw your spores out.
So I still think these would end up feeling kind of lackluster together. I get the initial draw to it, but like the Spore Druid benefits from just going further in Spore Druid. Like, sure, you get temp HP, but it's 4 times your Druid level. Mm-hmm. So if you just go 2 levels in it, that's 8 temp HP. As you start getting higher, it doesn't do much. And then you don't want to discount Halo Spores, which is one of the really main features of it, where if a creature enters your range of it, you could, as a reaction, deal spore damage to them. Not spore damage, poison, necrotic damage to them.
It is necrotic,
which is a con save they have to make. And then if you have Symbiotic Entity up, that's damage is doubled. It's a con save, so it's against your wisdom. Your spell save DC, which is based off your wisdom. So if you're trying to focus on charisma and your wisdom's crap, then that's probably never going to really hit.
Never hit is it never hits. Is what I've learned from it. First off, second off, it is still a uniquely powerful and universal use of your reaction. I don't think there's not really anything in the game quite as good at using your reaction every turn, especially in melee range.
Right. It's such a simple trigger of just something needs to be within 10 feet of you. And when you start making it a more melee-focused class, which just Spore Druid does by itself, not even talking about putting Hexblade in it, it really is probably the greatest use of reaction, or I guess, as you said, most consistent at the very least. When you talk about combining them, I don't know how much you're going to really get out of a small dip into Druid. I think this might be one of those classes that when you talk about the level 20 builds, the mythical end game, that you might have a lot there. But I think you're right, Kevin. You're going to be slacking for a very good portion of the level ups here. You're going to fall behind in damage. You are just going to be kind of an okay Warlock in some situations and kind of an okay Druid in others.
Right. So, let's look at 1 level dip. So if you're mainly Druid, let's say Spore Druid, and the 1 level dip in the Hexblade, you get the Hexblade's Curse, which is nice, but that's once per short rest?
Yes. Well, actually, it might be long rest. That one might be
short.
weird.
No, it's short or long.
Okay.
You could curse somebody and you get the bonus damage equal to your proficiency bonus, which is nice, but in the same sense, you could go like Druid Ranger or actually go one of the... I guess you could still go like Hex. I was saying like using Hex or Hunter's Mark, I think would probably end up outpacing that. Critting on a 19 instead of 20 is nice, but not something worth chasing.
It's going to be a while to get that extra attack.
Yeah.
And you can only get the extra attack through Warlocks.
Right.
That's an invocation. So Druids aren't going to get the second attack ever.
Right. Yeah, I think you could get at 6th level as a Warlock. Mm-hmm. I think if you pick an invocation. And then the last thing of Hexblade's Curse is the temp hit points, where if you kill the creature that has temp with the... if the cursed target dies, you don't have to kill him. You get temp hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. So if you're not focusing on Warlock, it's not going to be that great. And then again, if you're focused on Druid, then the Hex Warrior stuff, like you get proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. A lot of that you're not going to use because you can't use metal. And then you could use your Charisma modifier instead of Strength or Dex. But Druids get Shillelagh anyways, which just allows them to use Wisdom. Yes. So then it's less they have to focus on. It just feels like you're sacrificing a lot to try and force it to work.
Yeah. No,
But
I
you
get
do
you.
get a first level spell slot back every short rest, which is nice. And then Eldritch Blast. Is it worth it just to get Eldritch Blast?
Yeah.
It might be. It might
It
be.
might be.
That's kind of what the default is on any kind of Warlock combo. But the other thing is this is another thing I think I've brought up before, but if you go 2 levels into Warlock, it opens up more possibilities than probably any other choice you can make in the game for like that few levels. Being able to get invocations opens up just like these aren't mechanically powerful or insane things, but they are things like you just can't get anywhere else. You
Right.
know? Eyes of the Runekeeper is a great example. You can read all writing. You know,
It's cool.
if you have a character that wants that, it's definitely something you can get there. And there's plenty of mechanics in there too for your second level dip.
Right.
But
Right,
that's
or
I think
Devil
also a
Sight.
requirement. Though,
That
all
yeah, we can see
really,
magical
really
darkness. Do druids get darkness?
I mean, warlocks get it.
It's true. I think darkness
at
is second level.
It's a second level, so you have to go a little bit to get there. Sorcerer, warlock, wizard. Nope. A circle of the land if you go that big swamp. But
Which you could. Oh, and swamp specifically. Odd. Okay.
yeah,
Well, I guess that makes some
that's
sense.
how circle of the land works.
Yeah. You get your
Where,
extra
yeah,
spells.
you pick your terrain and then you have a new spell list to pick from there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, a 2 to 3 level dip into Warlock, even if it's not specifically meshing with the Druid aspects too well, they do just get good stuff. Like, even if we look away from the Hexblade, because I think trying to force this into a melee class might be a little much, but keeping it as a spellcaster and going back to what I was saying at the beginning, where sometimes if you just do that dip and it's 2 full spellcasters, you don't worry as much about the secondary stat. So maybe charisma's not going to be at 20 with your wisdom, but you're also not going to choose a bunch of spells like hold person, where it's really necessary for them to fail to save. Any spells that you can get that just happen and are going to keep coming back on a short rest, that's great. I can't remember every single Warlock spell off the top of my head like that. This is for Hexblade. I know they get Shield. That's one that can be very worthwhile just to have at all, you know, and it's like you don't need a high charisma in order for Shield to be effective. It's not based off your charisma modifier. It's just +5 to your AC for, you know, the next turn.
Right.
So
yeah,
any spells like that are going to be useful. Darkness is one of them, definitely.
Right. Yeah, it's not the second level though, so you'd have to go 3 into warlock to get that.
Yeah, but you
Which
get a lot.
could be worth it.
Yeah, because then you can get your Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Tome, or Pact of the Chain. And
Right.
one of the combos that I wanted to talk about was the Archfey Warlock, which isn't like, it's probably the least chosen Warlock. I just feel like I never hear about people going to the Archfey. And then the Circle of Dreams Druid. I do not think that the Circle of Dreams and Archfey Warlock have a absolute ton of mechanical synergy. I think you're still going to run into the exact same problems we mentioned otherwise of, you know, just no spell synergy, I guess, or like anything that specifically helps each other. But flavor-wise, the Circle of Dreams are very in tune with the Feywilds, and an Archfey Warlock is literally a pact with an Archfey. So right there, you've got the role-playing synergy, and I think going into the Pact of the Chain would be pretty cool. If only because you're getting a familiar then, which druids don't really have any ways of getting familiars, which is somewhat odd. I feel like they're the type of class, just like rangers with Beastmaster, that I would expect them to have a animal companion of some sort, or any type of companion. So
Animals aren't slaves, man.
That's fair. But,
Honestly,
you know,
yeah, I think that's kind of the take on it. And then like familiars are more arcane, more in the realm of wizards, where you can almost take it as like they pull like a magical creature from the Fays and enslave them. I could see druids very much being against
they
that.
essentially they buy the animal with their like incense and all that stuff. It costs like 25 gold.
right.
So you're like
10.
bribing some animal to be stuck in your service. I don't know. That's not very druidic in my mind, Jared.
Really? Because I feel like there's some mutual benefits there that could. I mean, that's like saying that dogs are slaves, which I think
I
you
have
actually,
said that.
yeah, you have actually said dogs are slaves.
Animal slaves.
So I mean, I think that's just going with the idea of a mutually beneficial relationship. That's up to the player to play that up, but to just cut it out entirely because that's not very druidy is a little much.
I could see it with the what you're saying with the Fey patron. That makes more sense. Where it's like you make your warlock thing, and they give you whatever, like a pseudo dragon or a sprite or whatever they give you. They're like, oh, here, this is a tool, and I don't know, it makes sense because you promised yourself, and it's
Right.
more ethical this way because you're a warlock.
You're a warlock, so you're already like skirting around some ethical boundaries that druids normally wouldn't cross. I guess. I don't know. I mean, druids aren't always just goody two shoes, right?
No, they're kind of always goody two shoes. They won't even use metal for whatever bizarre moral reason. What other class has that feature? It's like, oh, I'm really, really against X, Y, or Z. That has major mechanical implications. And the only justification is like, oh, yeah, no, that's gross or something.
Well, I don't understand monks, why they can't touch shields. Like, why would that...
Oh, yeah, they lose all their monk powers when
Right.
you touch shields.
Like, oh my god, if you touch a shield, you can't punch twice. Okay?
Lazy anime writing? I don't know.
You did mention the sprite familiar, and I really haven't looked at that as a familiar before. I feel like when people talk Pact of the Chain, the one that always comes up is the Quasit. But sprites actually aren't too bad. They're one of the only familiars that gets a ranged attack, a very weak ranged attack that is +6 to hit and then does 1 piercing damage. But the nice thing about it is it forces the creature it hit to make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for a minute. Now, I'm not saying this is going to come up every single time or that 1 damage is going to change the combat by any means, but if you just have a sprite that you can just kind of put up in the corner and just tell it to keep shooting until it poisons something, I mean, hey, that's something, right?
Yeah.
And very flavorful, and having a little sprite companion, which, I mean, you can reflavor it in whatever way you want. That's kind of the nice thing, in my opinion, is it doesn't need to specifically be a sprite. As long as it has the stat block of a sprite, who cares?
Right.
What would you give the stat block of a sprite to?
I literally don't think it matters. You can honestly say that it's a possum with wings and has a little short bow.
How would a possum use a short bow?
It's a fey creature. So it's how it looks. It doesn't matter how it actually acts or how many hands
The
it
short
needs.
bow just like floats behind the magical possum that you made up and shoots automatically.
Sure. I mean, I don't know why
Alright.
it couldn't hold it.
Keep in mind with the Pact of the Chain, with it attacking, you have to forego one of your attacks
Right.
for it to attack. So at that point, actually, I don't think it's worth it.
It's probably not super
I mean,
worth
it doesn't scale very well.
No, I mean, if it's kind of a Hail Mary, or if you can find a way to like give disadvantage on the Constitution save, maybe it becomes worthwhile. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't scale super well, or it's a good way just to, I don't know, start combat. If you are going Pact of the Chain, then you're probably going to get that Voice of the Chain Master, which lets you communicate through your familiar, and also, is that the one that lets you see through it as well?
Yeah, it does a bunch of stuff.
Okay, yeah. So, it is a great scouting creature, and that allows you to just scout up ahead. And, oh, you see the bad guy? I'm just going to have my sprite shoot shots into him, and hopefully it fails one until we get up there to actually fight. And then you might get there, 2 damage has been done, but it's failed its Constitution save, and now it's poisoned for the next minute. Or if it fails it by 5, which would be very tough. It's a very low roll. Probably not going to happen. But if it fails it by 5, it just goes unconscious.
Right.
I could see some
So
creativity.
if you get a
working in
5 on your con save, which is
this. Very low. I know.
it's just so bad. It's not terrible, especially at low levels though. Like, this is not bad.
Yeah, I'm not saying that in combat, like specifically in combat, that it's going to be extremely useful. you're right, Kevin. It's almost not useful every single time. But before combat or out of combat things, I could see it being worthwhile.
Definitely, but then you're comparing it to other stuff like the Quasit, which has invisibility and shape changing, which I think is just universally better for scouting.
Sprite has invisibility too.
Everybody's got invisibility.
Yeah.
And it's got its little heart sight thing, which I'd never seen before.
Nice.
The sprite touches a creature and magically knows the creature's current emotional state. If the target fails a DC 10 charisma saving throw, the sprite also knows the creature's alignment. Celestials, fiends, and undead automatically fail the saving throw. I don't know when that would come up. If I just want to know its current mood, might change how you go into a social situation. If you have the sprite going before, it's invisible, it touches somebody, and you find out they're currently in a bad mood. Maybe you and the party look at each other and go, "Let's come back tomorrow," instead of barging in and asking for things.
For social role playing and stuff, I think being able to, for sure, without a doubt, know somebody's emotional state can be very beneficial.
Yeah. So
I would love that, like just in real life. Just
that would make so many conversations so much easier.
Mm-hmm. And there's no limit on how often this thing can do it. And to know that, it doesn't even have to, there's no roll or anything. It just does it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like if it fails the save, which who cares? It like adds a little bit more on top of that. It's like, it's alignment.
The alignment, right?
Okay. I don't even make alignments for like 95% of NPCs. That's not the first thing that comes to mind.
Most of them would just be true neutral.
Right.
Like most commoners and stuff, like the farmer tending to the fields, they're just all true neutral.
They're a normal person. Stop asking, why did I let you get a sprite?
But no, I do like the sprite. I think it's been overlooked, at least by us.
Yeah.
No, well, all right. So here's the deal. You look at the only one that's mechanically not good, and I've read something, is like the pseudo dragon. For some reason, sucks. I remember saying some rating and analysis. But you look at the pictures of these things. You've got this little nerd with wings and spiky hair. You're a warlock. I'm going to choose the scorpion demon or the horrible horned two-toed death monster. I'm a warlock, man.
You're thinking of this from the perspective...
little sidekick dude.
You're thinking of this from the perspective of a great old one, warlock, or a hexblade warlock, or whatever.
Literally any other warlock.
Archfey and sprite or pseudo dragon makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I know.
Especially same with the celestial and sprite.
I hate the celestial too, man. Ugh.
Especially,
why would somebody have the opportunity to be so edgy and choose not to be?
Maybe they follow a corrupt Empyrean. Ooh. Which we'll get to later in the show.
I'd like to learn more about those.
The Circle of the Dreams, which I had mentioned, is not like gonna blow you away from a small dip. You can get their second level ability gives you a pool of D6s to heal people with, which is like not that much. At second level, you get 2 D6s. If that's all you ever go into for Druid, just to like get the wild shape, it's never going to be that amazing. But if you end up getting that Gift of the Ever Living Ones pact feature, the invocation that's Circle of the Chain, the Pact of the Chain or whatever, it makes it so that when you're within 100 feet of your familiar, your healing is maximized. Like any healing towards you is just the max possible. So I could see taking that because it's just good. I mean, anytime somebody heals you, it just goes to the max. That's amazing. But then as a bonus action, you can give yourself a free, a 6 HP twice per long rest if you're only level 2 in Druid. Once you go up to level 4, that it's like you can do half your Druid level in dice in one bonus action. So you can give yourself 12 HP twice per long rest. It's not a ton. And you also get a whole 1 HP and temp HP when you use them. So a lot of numbers around there. But long story short, you can maximize the self-healing. It's not a ton. It's basically the equivalent of Second Wind for a fighter. But, free healing's free healing. And then you get Wild Shape, which I wouldn't turn down.
No.
And that's one thing that
No,
we
yeah.
haven't mentioned either, is we talked about that a ton with the Rogue Druid. Just having wild shape, not having like a crazy high level wild shape. It doesn't need to be Circle of the Moon or anything. Just having the ability to turn into a cat is super useful.
Oh, yeah. Tons of utility. Yeah, outside of combat, but yeah, tons and tons of utility there. That's always a given. And always a big, just like there's always the tempt of going one level into Warlock to get Eldritch Blast, because there's tons of in-combat utility there, and it's always going to scale with you. 2 levels into Druid's also always tempting, because Wild Shape has a ton of utility. 'Cause even if you never go past 2, I mean, you get it twice a day for 1 hour each, so total 2 hours, which isn't super long, and nothing really above like challenge rating 1/4, I think. Mm-hmm. It might even just be challenge rating 0, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's 1/4 per second, I believe.
Yeah, but that's still infinitely useful. A cat, a rat, a spider,
Whatever.
to infiltrate, spy, whatever. There's a million and one uses.
And I think one thing to keep in mind is it does, with that situation, you really are totally out of combat utility. Like, even considering how crappy, like being a wolf, you get 11 hit points. That's also an action, so it's like, it eventually becomes a huge waste. But out of combat, it's really, really friggin' cool.
Mm-hmm. And then let's talk a bit about Circle of the Moon and Combat Wild Shape, if there's much synergy there with Warlock. I think there can be some, based on certain subclasses of it. The initial assumption is, I think, Hexblade, but if you really start looking into it, it doesn't work that well with Moon Druid. Because the whole thing about using Charisma and your special weapon and all that can't be used while Wild Shape, so that just Hex Warrior basically completely goes out the window.
Right.
If you're trying to be Circle of the Moon. You can Hexblade's Curse, though, well shaped. It's not cast in a spell. It's just a bonus action. Or not a bonus action. It's just a class feature. So I think that's nice.
Then. Yeah, 1 level dip into the Hexblade, of course. Can you...
But if you're going that route, then I think you're probably better off going like the Fiend. If you reduce hostile creatures 0 hit points, you gain 10 hit points equal to Charisma plus Warlock level. You could also get Burning Hands and Command. Though at first level of Hexblade, you get Shield. Which you can't do well shaped.
Right.
You could do Wrathful Smite, actually. Since that's a concentration, you could cast it before transforming.
Always love
and
those.
then transform, and then you get your Wrathful Smite off of your bear attack or whatever.
Right. And I think one thing that's important to remember, because Warlock or multiclassing with Warlocks is weird, once you have access to those spells, you can use your Druid spell slots to cast it. So if you want to use Wrathful Smite more often, you can. And you start with your Warlock ones, because those come back on a short rest. But, it's not like you only get one use of it because you took a 1 level dip. Or I don't know what level Wrathful Smite is.
It's 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you get that real early on, and then just use all your Druid spell slots for it. Even if you're not in your wild shapes. If you just want to do Shillelagh, and then Wrathful Smite with your Wisdom Club. Your Wisdom Club.
Wisdom Club.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's no specific name for it, just a Wisdom Club. I like some just crazy off the top of my head thing like Shillelagh or
no, I don't think it's
like
that.
Yeah, a Wisdom Club.
No, that's just a spell name. I don't know what you're getting. Wisdom Stick.
When my grandfather
Beat some
punished
sense into
me,
him.
He did not tell me to get the Shillelagh. He told me to get the Wisdom Stick. So you're playing like an old grandpa druid who threatens people with his Wisdom Stick.
Oh, God.
So that's sound pretty inappropriate.
Does it?
Yeah.
Does it have to?
I don't know. It doesn't have to, obviously.
Don't ruin it, Kevin. So are you being a prevert? Let me get my Wisdom Stick. So, yeah, I mean, Circle of the Moon I don't know. I have a hard time with that just because you are going to be holding back from a lot of the spellcasting stuff. I guess really, I don't know what pact you would go in Warlock, or if you really do just want to do a 1-level dip just for that Eldritch Blast. But it seems weird to me to dip into Warlock for Eldritch Blast and then spend all of your time as a bear. Because bears
Except
can't
for
Eldritch
you
Blast.
wouldn't. You only twice a day. You could do it, so it gives you some utility out of it. Or like the Archfey, so you would get Fairy Fire and Sleep. Both really good spells, especially at low levels. Sleep, especially at low levels. Fairy Fire is always useful.
Right.
And it could be done before you transform and then keep it up. Actually, I don't think Sleep's even concentration.
Sleep's kind of garbage. I mean,
At low level, Sleep is amazing.
you're right. It's
Then at about level 5, it tapers off.
But that's like most of the game.
It just depends. Well, there's a lot of low level. We always hurry through like 1 through 3, so it makes like 5 seem to get there real fast, but not everyone does that. And then in Fey Presence, it's not casting a spell. You could use it. That's where you could create a 10-foot cube originating from you. Everyone in it needs to make a Wisdom saving throw, or they will become charmed or frightened by you until the end of your next turn.
And then don't they get something at might be later levels, but can't they like teleport?
Yeah, 6th level Misty Escape, where you could become invisible and teleport 60 feet away to an unoccupied space, and you're invisible until the start of your next turn, or you cast or attack a spell.
Yeah, so you might not get that 6th level in Warlock if you're trying to go down the wild shape train, but that's such a good one. I really like that, and that's per short or long rest. So just you use your reaction, turn invisible, teleport 60 feet, and then you're invisible until the start of your next turn, or until you attack or cast a spell.
Right. Which is, a cool ability, but it's pretty far to chase.
Yeah.
Something. Of course, then you get other Warlock stuff. Your Cantrip Gnome goes up. Your Warlock spell slots go up. Things like that. But if you're trying to focus on Moon Druid, then you're really delaying that progression.
Right. Yeah, I think even our last episode, we talked about how Moon Druid's very important to stay the track, just because of that.
Right.
The elemental transfer, or when you can change into an elemental, I think that's at 11th level. Delaying that in any capacity is difficult, to say the least.
10th, but yeah.
10th level? Okay, even better.
This is like what I said before. There is just like this trove of stuff you can get in Eldritch Invocations that sometimes make sense but often don't. But with multi-classing, it becomes weird. One thing is like Armor of the Shadows is something I think about my AC all the time as a druid because it's garbage. Mage Armor at will is something you can get with Armor of the Shadows, Eldritch Invocation. You can just cast it whenever. And the problem here is now you're dependent on your dex, which is 13 plus dex is your new AC, so you'd need that to get high. And to do that now, you need a charisma requirement. It's like...
Yeah, it's kind of starting to stretch
It's
things.
tough, yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like a good idea, but I don't know.
But
dump everything else.
my druid actually won't wear magical armor either. Only wood. Just
only wood.
Yeah, just strap some wood planks to my arms, and that's the only armor.
Way better than you think it would.
But like, I only want dead trees, like naturally killed trees. If they were
organically killed.
Yeah. If
they had to die of old age.
Yeah. Or the bark fell off naturally, like a tree struck by lightning. That's totally fair game.
What about termites or something like that, infesting them and killing the tree?
I think that's fair. As long as it's natural, then that's all totally good. Unless somebody put those termites there. So like I would have to source the termites to make sure that like there wasn't any funny business, like a wizard putting termites in the as an invasive species. As long as
you have to do that with your lightning too. You have to make sure it was organically grown lightning and not magic lightning.
Was this free
range? That actually becomes a legit problem.
Only in this universe can you have that issue.
Right.
Naturally occurring lightning.
You track it down and find out it was some random wizard practicing their spells, and now you just like have to give up your armor.
Shit. Yeah, you gotta strip your armor off. Go bury it in the woods. Plant a new seed over it so as it rots into the earth. Yeah.
This would be
Druid
the worst and most convoluted quest line ever. Is there's like a company that's making Druid armor, but they're making it suspiciously fast. You find out, one of the proprietors is using call lightning to harvest this, wood, and then your players are just gonna look at you and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
And the Druid just slams his fist down.
Why can't we fight goblins? Why can't we fight dragons? It's like, no, you have to make sure this is properly sourced wood for the Druid armor factory.
The Druid just slams down his fist like, I'm here! I'm ready for it! Charges off into the woods. You guys just want to leave him? That's for the best, yeah.
Reroll, buddy.
All right, role-playing reasons. We should probably talk about that
a
bit. Druid, multi-class into the Warlock, to me, makes sense. There's 1,000,001 ways to go about that. Every time Warlock comes up, we always talk about how that's always an interesting multi-class because it usually requires a deliberate choice on the character's part.
Right. Yeah, no, and I totally agree here, too. I don't think anything takes away from that. I think that it's very natural for anybody to feel like they don't have enough power. Warlock is supposed to be that easy way forward to get more power. So a druid who wants to protect people and they can't, they're not seeing the way forward, people aren't listening to them, and some entity says, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and give you Eldritch Blast.
Right.
Perfect. I think,
or like Archfey absolutely makes sense for a druid to run into an Archfey and there's their day-to-day life.
Right.
Really.
Right. Yeah. So I think what I am more curious on from a role-playing perspective for this one is more about what the being would want from this druid. Because a druid as a whole, it's usually like their deal to just keep nature in check. So what would an Archfey really bring to the table to say like, hey, I'll give you some extra powers, give you a connection with the Feywilds, but I'm going to need you to do this. And I think that's where things can really separate and you can define your own character.
Right.
Because
you could do...
No, go ahead if you got an idea.
Something where maybe part of the forest this druid sort of protects and keeps in balance. There's a sort of the veil between the material plane and the Feywild is thin, and so there's a lot of Fey creatures in and out of there, and you could kind of easily transfer between the two of them. And the Archfey of that area feels they're under threat, and so they kind of recruit this druid where, hey, you get extra powers, and you'll have a bit easier time of protecting your forest and your land, but that also means you're protecting us, and just kind of, let us do our thing.
Or in the more...
Or there's... Go on.
On the more edgy side, if you have the Archfey explaining, like, hey, I'll give you power, whatever. I just need you to help me, transfer between the Feywilds and the material plane, just like 1 or 2 times, it might be helpful. And then they, upon success, or maybe unraveling the plan, find out that they're really trying to bring the Feywilds to the material plane as a whole. And bring that kind of chaotic element of that realm, or even just taking over the material plane. I mean, that's something you can definitely play up.
Right.
Yeah, everyone always thinks that the Fays are good, but they're not. They're evil.
All of them. I mean, hags are Fey.
Yeah. Elves are Fey.
They're not... Say they're not all evil. A lot of them are very mischievous, and there are definitely evil ones and good ones. And...
Right.
You could also, of course, do like just a classic kind of corruption arc for the character. They're a druid and they're really, they're seeing their forest or whatever they're trying to protect getting destroyed, and they can't stop it, so they sell their soul to the devil for more power. I mean, that's very classic Warlock stuff.
Yeah.
Or they start looking into old arcane ancient magics to increase their power and end up tapping into a great old one and kind of go insane, but now they have Eldritch Blast and they could scare people.
Or they find a sword and they're like, nope, that's metal.
They're like, nope, that's... This one is not for me. I could feel it. There are better ways to go about this. Is there a devil I could sell my soul to?
Oh my god, that gave me an idea for a really just cheap, lazy, try-hardy multi-class of they accidentally find a Hexblade patron in the form of a metal weapon, and they pick it up and like, oh, and the Hexblade's like, nope, nope, you touched me, nope. And they're like, no,
No takebacks.
And they have to like, it's like a buddy comedy between like a druid and the sword he doesn't get along with. Don't do that, but
well, it'd be great
an
because
idea.
it wouldn't even use the sword. Like, as we discussed, I mean, if it's like a circle of the moon, the best thing for them to do is really just take the Hexblade's curse that they get per short rest and get them crits on 19 and everything else that comes with it. But actually swinging the sword, they're like, well, I don't have a high charisma, so why am I going to bother? So they can
Just
really
carrying it around.
They just play up the whole like, no, I'm not going to use you. You're metal. Like, I can't do that.
All right, other way around, Warlock going into Druid feels a good bit trickier to not make that feel shoehorned in there.
Yeah, I mean, I would, not to keep bringing this one up, but I would probably allow Circle of the Dreams for an Archfey Warlock, and it would really be just reflavoring the Druid class as how you're manifesting your abilities. You know, if you take 2 levels into Druid, it's like, it doesn't need to be a whole, like, I love nature now. It's more of just, hey, this is how I'm going to give you your powers. And I can see that working out well.
Yeah, that's very true. Where you kind of throw out the typical source of classes and just sort of that's how they're manifested. I mean, that's what we're doing now, basically, with my current character, Rogue Paladin. It's
right.
Not so much getting the Paladin stuff from a god or a devotion. It's just sort of how his magic and talent manifests.
Right. And I'm definitely a big fan of that. Like I said, you have the Arcane Trickster rogue subclass that, it doesn't really make sense for your character to be all that intelligent or arcane sensitive. It's just like, basically he got powers in the way that a sorcerer normally does. And it's manifesting as, Arcane Trickster. It's not that much. So it's not a
Arcane
big
Trickster
deal.
Paladin, yeah.
Right. It really is a great multi-class.
It is.
I hate when that
We're
just
gonna
accidentally happens.
Getting super off topic. So if we want to try and keep it though, where it's not reflavoring that, where it's like you have the clear Warlock and the clear Druid and like the player handbook descriptions of each. There's the redemption arc. We talked about the corruption arc, but the opposite, where they've started working with a fiend or a great old one for a while and realizing, okay, this isn't quite okay. I'm upsetting the natural order and balance of things and corrupting myself in the process. And so they devote themselves to nature and become a druid. But then that gets hard to justify why they would still be using their warlock powers.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with still using the warlock powers. One thing that's made explicitly clear is that upon the agreement with your being, it's right in the contract language, Kevin. It states that they can't really take that power away, at least from a rules as written type deal. It's kind of expected that if you just stop taking levels in Warlock, you're like, oh my god, this dude's trying to get me to blow up the natural order of the world. I'm going to stop. The guy, the Eldritch Being, Great Old One, is just kind of like, you got me, but you can keep Eldritch Blast. But I'm not going to give you any more power because you're not listening to me.
Or actually, I think to make it more interesting is then they come after you.
Right.
Or they send other warlocks.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, rules as written, they can take your powers away by just straight fucking killing you. There's not a single patron in the Warlock realm that can't beat your party. That's kind of why they're patrons.
Right.
So, they always have that.
But you have ones that may not. Like the Great Old Ones, though, that one's actually probably set up best for this because there's a really good chance they don't even know you. They don't think about you. They don't even fully register your siphoning power off of them because they're so foreign and powerful and on a completely different level. They just don't give a shit.
Right. So then when you turn
away,
away,
you stop. It's
you then turn towards the druidic path for whatever reasons.
Right.
There's obviously because you want something mechanically reasons, but more than likely it makes sense for your character. Maybe the campaign's very centered on nature or has a lot of nature themes that have come up, and that's what made your character realize it. Great, go into Druid. I can see that.
Yeah, or whatever your patron was having you do was kind of like the opposite of what a Druid does, right? I can see like a fiend, something like that, or like a devil or demon type patron.
They burn down the forest.
Yeah, pretty much. Or let me help me bring demons to this area of the world, which of course is going to mess up everything and upset the natural order and the balance in nature. And so as a reaction, you go complete opposite direction of Druid.
I think that would take more than a reaction. But the quality content.
This is what people tune in for. Puns.
All right. Yeah, I can't think of many other reasons, though, beyond the redemption arc. I find it difficult to wrap them up together in like a mutually pursued interest. I don't see somebody being
unless
like,
you're Archfey.
Unless you're Archfey. I think Archfey is fine.
Or Celestial, too. I can very much see certain Celestials, especially like a true neutral. Or just like, not true neutral, just neutral type Celestial entity. Yes, then you're their patron, and they start worrying about the balance being upset in this area of the world or in nature, or the orcs or the humans over there are getting too a little too ambitious and tearing everything down. I want you to go take care of that, and in the process, you being up over Druid Circle and kind of get trained in their ways a bit too. And I would think most Celestials would not have a problem with that.
No, yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's definitely, I don't think I would ever play that. I don't like that, but I could see somebody else wanting to do that.
And then I know mechanically we all hate it, but the Undying with a Spore Druid sounds kind of nice.
Which one?
It feels like the Undying.
Oh, flavor-wise? Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, the mechanically we all hate.
So
we went way too much detail in an episode a while ago, but
again.
No, we don't.
I don't know which episode that was. I will try and track it down, but we had an entire 10, 15-minute conversation about why we hate the Undying. So,
and you have a whole character that's kind of based around this sort of mastery of life and death, and so they got the Spore Druid, which is about decay and all that, and then the Undying fitting with it. So like you're kind of avoiding it yourself while facilitating, manipulating that stuff with others.
I could see it if you only wanted to do like the one level dip into Warlock, just for that Eldritch Blast and small thing in. Yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, and then you could kind of flavor it just a bit on the edgier side of things, where the Spore Druid's about like fungus and mushrooms decaying, which is a little gross, but still feels, I don't know, just like it doesn't like churn my stomach.
No,
thinking about it. But then you bring the Undying Warlock into it, and it's not just fungus and stuff. Now you got like maggots and like the bacteria of decay and flies and see, then it just makes it kind of grosser.
Yeah,
so
that is
turn
a
up
lot.
the edge a bit.
They're doing the same thing, but I don't like maggots. I don't like the word maggot.
Yeah.
Compare that to fungus. Fungus it literally has fun in the name. I know that's low hanging fruit,
right?
But it's a much better word.
Also, has Gus in the name. I've never met a Gus I didn't like, so it's like a fun Gus.
That's true. Yeah.
Literally the super big bad guy of Breaking Bad was Gus.
I didn't watch Breaking Bad.
Oh, you should. But this would give you an excuse to have Cloak of Flies if you took 5 levels of Warlock.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too. I was disappointed it's 5 levels. I was hoping it would be you could get at second level.
That one's great.
Yeah.
5 levels might not make it worth it.
Would somebody like to go over what Cloak of Flies does for the folks at home?
So it's
yeah, basically, it's a bonus action. So you can get this as a 5th level invocation. Bonus action, you can surround yourself with a magical aura that looks like buzzing flies. It extends 5 feet from you in every direction. Lasts until you're incapacitated, or dismiss it as a bonus action. So it's not a time limit. You can, in theory, just walk around all day with this. It gives you advantage on intimidation checks, but disadvantage on all other charisma checks. And any creature that starts this turn in the aura takes poison damage equal to your charisma modifier. You could use it once per short or long rest. So you could just be a complete asshole and just have this always on. And just sitting in a tavern, walking down the narrow road with your party, just always on.
It's actually great for social distancing. Make sure people stay 10 feet away from you at all times. Otherwise, they literally take poison damage.
Yep. Yeah, there's no save on it or anything. It just happens. That's what makes it real nice.
Yeah. That's really good. And again, mixed with Spore Druid, it makes you... It makes people not want to get close to you. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Use your reaction to have them make the con save or take necrotic damage, and then they're also within 10 feet, so they're taking the poison damage. It's a lot of effort to get there. to take 5 levels in Warlock and then a good amount in Spore Druid to have that be good too, but I like it.
Yep.
Total waste of time, but you're covered in flies. You know. I can get behind it.
One question that I've heard from viewers a lot is to discuss, at least briefly, what races might work well for this. So I looked into that a little bit. Half-elf was kind of the obvious one because half-elves get the +2 to charisma and then +1 to 2 different stats. I think half-elves are like the multi-class royalty because of that. They make it very easy since so many things are charisma casters. Other ones, tieflings, because they get +2 charisma, once again, just making it easier. Tieflings and warlocks also go hand in hand, as they always have. Then
they added a tiefling that I think gets wisdom too now.
Did they? I think they did add some tiefling variants. I don't remember if those ever became official.
I thought they did.
I think they are.
Okay.
Aren't they in Volos or Mordenkainens?
I think they might be Mordenkainens, because that added the whole devils thing, devils and demons conflict.
Right.
lore.
Yeah, Mordenkainens makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I guess keep talking.
Yeah, that's fine.
Up here.
The last race that I know literally nothing about is a Kalishtar. It was added in the Eberron books, and we are not the people to talk about Eberron lore. That is in zero ways any of our wheelhouses, but it does add +2 to wisdom and +1 to charisma. I also, just briefly looking through the lore, saw that they have some connection to dreams or the lack thereof dreams. So I kind of liked it with my Circle of the Dreams and Archfey Warlock. Now, I will turn that one over to listeners to some extent. If there is some reason why that doesn't work or something that you know about the Kalishtar race that you want to talk about, you go ahead and do that. Let us know, because I am very ignorant on it.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm probably going to butcher how you say this. Fierna Tiefling, Fierna.
Okay.
It doesn't say where it's from here, but yeah, they get charisma +2 and wisdom +1, and then they can cast Friends as a cantrip at 3rd level, Charm Person as a 2nd level spell once per day, 5th level Suggestion once per day.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I forgot tieflings get the natural casting. Forgot about that.
Yep.
Love me some tieflings. So, what else? I mean, what else about the Druid Warlock?
I think that we kind of covered it. The thing that I would like to reiterate, though, is like Druids do not get good cantrips at all. They have like the weakest cantrips in the game for a full caster, except maybe bards. But so you do get the Eldritch Blast, and that is kind of a big deal for a Druid. So that's worth just kind of noting.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it becomes difficult only because, you know, how much of your ability score increases are you going to focus on charisma just to have a good cantrip when you're sacrificing your actual spell save? And, you know, are you even going to throw invocations at the Eldritch Blast, which is, you know, what really makes it such a great cantrip is when you start adding your charisma to the damage rolls, or when you start pushing and pulling creatures, or whatever any of the other 20 Eldritch Blast related invocations are. I think you're going to be missing out on a lot of that unless you really focus on Warlock.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, good flavor. I think it's got a ton of flavor. Mechanically, I still don't love it.
Yeah, it's a few ways here and there to do it, but it's not really exciting me. This is not one of the ones where I want to go play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't play it either. I'm having fun with my Spore Druid. I'd just be a regular Warlock, to be honest.
And again, there's the limitation of both 13 charisma and wisdom is kind of tough.
Yeah.
Especially because like you don't want to just dump dexterity.
No. Or Constitution. Like ever. So, yeah. Little tough. Well,
cool. I think we're good to...
I think so as well. Let's go ahead and move on to our Pinocchio minute, where...
Nailed it.
All right, so I think that's it for the Warlock Druid or Druid Warlock. Or
No. You don't get to re-record that. You're keeping your fuck up there. I'm not editing that out.
I'm just going to edit it before I send it to you.
Hey. But that's going to be a major pain.
I know,
in the ass, 'cause then
right?
That's going to be out of sync.
Yeah.
I have to resync it halfway through and figure out where your cut is. Don't do that. All right. Pinocchio minute. Go on, Jared.
All right. Whatever. We're done with Druid Warlock. Moving on. Before we get to our Monster of the Week, this episode was sponsored by Scabbard RPG Campaign Manager and World Building Tool. Scabbard can help even the most disorganized DM put together a fleshed out world and lets you spend your time world building instead of trying to remember minute details. I've been using it for the past year now and have absolutely loved how it actually keeps me focused on world building and lets me give an answer anytime my players ask who the bartender was at that miscellaneous bar they visited 7 months ago. So that alone is worth everything on it. They've recently added a proper noun detector. When you save a note of any kind, Scabbard will scan the text and alert you if it finds any proper nouns that you may want to track or expand upon. Right now, our listeners can get an extra month plus 10% off a hero subscription if you go to scabbard.com/monsters, and that's Scabbard with 1B. So scabbard.com/monsters. You can find that link with the show description on our website, Twitter, all of the normal places. If you are not yet, make sure to subscribe to our subreddit, which is our Monsters and Multiclass. Follow us on Twitter, which is monsters_multi, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to leave a review. It's really helpful with other people finding us and getting more listeners, beautiful listeners, to discuss nerdy things with. All right, with that, let's get to our Monster of the Week.
For this week's episode, we're taking a look at the Empyreans. Empyreans are pretty much the champions of the gods. They are skilled warriors, huge in size, pack a huge wallop, take a hell of a hit. Definitely, as you get up there in campaigns, a sort of a good intro to the celestial level of combat, where you're like, as you start nearing 20, realize, okay, it's time. We're done with the material plane. It's time to get involved with the games of the gods and the devils. I think Empyreans are a really good way to bring that in. So, what are you guys' thoughts on the Empyreans?
Yeah, so these are very often described as titans, which just makes so much sense. They seem to be pulled directly from Greek mythology. They are children of the gods, check. They live forever, check. And they are CR23, so that sounds about right. Definitely not something you're going to be throwing at your lower level party by any means. No. So, I mean, talking about just the stat block first, because I think we'll get into how to put this into your campaign. But let's just talk about what makes this thing so deadly. So, as I mentioned, it is challenge rating 23. Around this point is when I feel like you normally just kind of gloss past the stat numbers themselves of like strength, dex, and everything. But this one is actually pretty ridiculous. It doesn't have a single stat under 20, with its lowest being 21. It's got a strength of 30, dex of 21, 30 con, 21 intelligence, 22 wisdom, and 27 charisma. And it's funny that intelligence looks like it's pretty low down there with only a +5, but then you realize that, no, that's still a +5.
Right, I mean, it's higher than most PCs will ever get.
Right.
Yeah, it's saving throws, so it has +17 strength saving throw, +12 intelligence, +13 wisdom, +15 charisma. Even its dex saving throws are still going to be +5, even though it doesn't like have it as a special proficiency.
And I think that's without a doubt on purpose, because just thinking about what spells target dex, they're not the ones that shut down combat. No. You're talking about ones that deal damage, like Fireball, maybe impede movement, but not too many where it's just like, oh yeah, just save, or if you don't save, you just lose.
Save
compared to literally all the other ones of like intelligence being +12. Yeah, you're not going to feeble mind this thing.
Yeah, some con saves can be dangerous, and they don't have proficiency in it, but they have 30 con, so they still +10.
Yeah. Yeah, not worried about it.
So, and then of course legendary resistance. So they still, if they fail, they could still choose to succeed instead.
Oh, and magic resistance, which means they have advantage on all of these.
Yeah. So, I mean, you might be able to succeed in grappling it. It would only have a plus 10 to
That's
prevent
huge.
that.
You would
And
have to make yourself large.
If you enlarged yourself, you could try grappling this thing. You shouldn't do that, though. Like,
No.
you have no reason to do that.
Yeah, why do you think that would work? It is plus 10.
I don't know. I don't know why you'd do that. It'd be very dumb. Looking at its skills, it has insight and persuasion, which I think it's interesting that it doesn't have something like athletics. I know that it doesn't need it by any means, so maybe that's the reasoning behind it. But the fact that it's insight and persuasion tells me that this, above all, is going to be a very social creature. That shows that it is a social savant, and that shouldn't be overlooked when trying to put this together. Actually, I forgot to bring this part up. I have used this monster before. Do you guys remember?
Yeah, it was an arena.
Right.
fight.
It was, and when we decided to do this creature, I had the same thought that I always do, which is like, man, I really hope that I'm not going to end up looking back on that fight and thinking, man, I screwed that up. Literally within 3 minutes of reading this thing's stat block, I was like, I ran that fight horribly. It was supposed to be just like a generic arena fight where I just dropped you guys in and it was like, hey, go at it. But did you guys notice that this thing has spells? Like really good spells?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah,
decently
because
good
first
spells.
year DMing Jared did not know it had spells. So looking at those, I think they're pretty interesting, at least the ones that it gets once per day. Earthquake, Firestorm, and Plane Shift are the ones that I want to talk about. I don't think I've ever seen Firestorm cast ever at our table, or any table that I've ever played in.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit cleric, druid, or sorcerer.
Right, and it's 7th level, so you're not
it's
getting
really
it
up
anytime early here. But it is a really great damage spell. It just does... Everyone makes a dexterity saving throw who gets caught in it, but you basically make 10 10-foot cubes that you could just place wherever you want in a 150-foot radius. And then everything that gets hit by it takes 7d10 fire damage on a failed save, half as much damage on a successful save. That's just a ton of damage, and I couldn't imagine not using that if you were doing an Empyrean fight, except the fact that I didn't use that in the Empyrean fight.
Yeah, and it's
No, this
really
is,
flexible.
it's
You
actually
can sculpt
interesting.
it.
This is one of those spells that really, really fits well for an NPC more than a PC, because like at that level, you kind of almost tend towards not having so many enemies on the map. It's just the nature of D&D combat. Whereas when you are the big bad guy in this case, you're always going to be facing that many people.
Right.
So you can find a use for your cubes.
Definitely. So, I mean, just hitting the entire party for that average damage of, I don't even know, what's 7 times 6? Who needs to do math? This shouldn't be this hard. 42? That sound right?
Yes.
Okay. So 42 damage on average for each person that it hits. You know, you're hitting a single, or 4 people in a party, and you're doing 160 damage potentially. And I think it's save DC is 23.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty nice. The other spell is Earthquake, or one of the other spells. Another one that just, it's high level, so you're really only going to see it in that high level play. And as you just said, Will, another one that I think is very well suited to NPCs using, not so much for PCs. If you're not familiar with Earthquake, basically rip an intense tremor through a 100-foot radius circle. The ground becomes difficult terrain, and each creature on the ground that is concentrating has to make a concentration check, basically, which is really nice just to force that out of everybody. And you can also do some crazy stuff like make some fissures erupt through the ground where people might fall in or have to, get pulled to the side of them. It's a really good way to just break up the terrain and shape it a little bit to be I guess against the PCs. Also, since it's concentration, it can be held, and every single turn, a person has to make a dexterity saving throw, which against that DC 23, or they're knocked prone. So it's very difficult if you don't have fly or anything.
For sure. And it also could do at will greater restoration. So even if you somehow manage to get past its ridiculous saves and get some terrible effect off, in a turn it could just most likely remove whatever effect you got on it.
Yeah. That's really nice too. I even think about that one.
Yeah. Some good spells, but at the same time, so the Firestorm and Earthquake are 1 a day each.
Mm-hmm.
So not a whole lot in like any crazy direct damage spells, but I think that's okay.
Right, I agree. There's one other spell, though, that I think is very important, and that's Plane Shift, which I, once again, had probably never read before this. But the best part about Plane Shift is it like has a whole bunch of stuff that you can normally do of just like, yeah, you can shift planes. But also it's basically like the coolest banishment ever. You choose a creature within your reach and make a melee spell attack against it, which this thing has plus 15 on. On a hit, the creature makes a charisma saving throw, DC 23. If the creature fails the save, it's transported to a random location on the plane of existence you specify. A creature so transported must find its own way back to your current plane of existence. That's
which is such a dick move.
Such a dick move. But
right.
I was even trying to think of it like in that it's just a good way to get a PC out of the fight, to be completely honest.
I'm going to say that it's not, especially because like the chances of you teleporting your like barbarian to a plane he's never even heard of is pretty high.
And I think it's DM discretion. Don't be too mean about it. I wouldn't send them just to like the abyssal plane or something. Just be like, good luck. But even just sending them back to the material plane, there are circumstances where you can definitely do that and not feel horrible about it. I also wouldn't start a fight with it because that would really, really suck as a player to just like very first turn, you just get knocked out of this plane of existence. Great. Unless you also have plane shift, in which case,
right.
I guess it's fine.
Yeah, that's one where it depends on the party makeup and the abilities they have, because some parties really do not have any ability to fix that situation.
Right.
And I was like, you just split the party. I mean, it could be a campaign ender or a way to kill a character.
You send the barbarian to the city of brass, and then you yell at your players for splitting the party.
Well, I mean, I think that this is definitely a creature that can be used as a like end of campaign boss fight, and we'll probably talk a little more about that once we get to the RP side of things. So you do have to be careful with it. You're 100% right. I would not start a fight with this or expect this not to have really intense consequences, but it's still a really cool spell that they can use.
Right.
And a DM is well within their rights to banish somebody to the Brass City.
Just that fucking elemental plane of fire.
Why not?
Hope you like it hot, buddy.
It's what you get for fighting an Empyrean.
Back on some of the other stats and stuff. They do have damage immunities, bludgeon, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. Just complete immunity. True sight out to 120 feet, so no real tricking this thing, sneaking up on it, anything like that. Knows all languages.
I do like
weapons
that.
Are magical. Yeah.
I love that on the languages it just says all.
Yeah.
That's so badass. The one thing that I found funny was that it says the Empyreans' weapon attacks are magical. Are there any PC class features that give them resistance unless it's magical weapons? Because I even looked at like...
There is magic armor that does it, I think.
Okay, where it's like you have resistance to all non-magical attacks? Or something along those lines?
In Heavy Armor Master, I want to say it's the opposite, where if it is magical, you can't reduce it by 3.
You're right.
But, when you get hit by this, it's not like 3 damages. All that big a deal anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so it has 2 attacks, Maul and Bolt. Maul is a melee weapon attack, plus 17 to hit with a 10-foot reach. It's 6d6 plus 10 bludgeoning damage. And it's the creature must succeed on DC 15 con save or be stunned until the Empyrean's next turn. Bolt is plus 15 to hit 600-foot range. This is not like where you have the regular and then disadvantage, just 600 feet flat out. 76 damage of a elemental type of your choice.
Yeah.
Heavy hitter, though no multi-attack, which is odd at this level.
Very interesting. And I kind of dislike it because it's very much so a balance choice, not so much a flavor choice, because then in its legendary actions, one of them is attack. So it's still going to be attacking multiple times per round. They just didn't want you, dealing out 62 damage in one of this thing's turns, I guess. Right.
I say, the average of that mole is 31.
It's beautiful.
Yes, and then, 15 con save or be stunned. I mean, that's...
And maybe that's the reason why, is because the ability to stun them on the first one and then get advantage on the second attack is too much. I don't know. When you start talking about plus 17 to hit, you're really not going to miss too much.
Yeah.
I honestly think it was a design choice in the legendary actions, because this is one of the OG monsters from the monster manual. But, legendary actions, it makes the perfect kind of rhythm as one attack each time. It makes it an interesting creature to fight. It's a good showcase for what legendary actions turn a fight into.
Right. Yeah, and then speaking of the legendary actions, these work the same they do for everything else. They have 3 legendary actions. They reset. The number of actions reset on its turn, and it can use one action immediately after another creature's turn. And there's 3 options here. So attack, it could just make one of its attack, it's smaller or bolt. Bolster, and it bolsters all non-hostile creatures with 120 feet until the end of its next turn. These creatures cannot be charmed or frightened, and they have advantage on ability checks and saving throws. Which is okay. It's just for one turn, and... I guess we'll get to later about if this is going to be fighting with other stuff. And then you have Trembling Strike, which costs 2 actions. It hits the ground if it's small, triggering an Earth Tremor. All creatures on the ground within 60 feet must succeed on a DC 25 Strength saving throw or be knocked prone.
So that's really good, but costing 2 actions makes me very hesitant to use that. I would definitely rather start with the Earthquake, which is going to be something that you can just hold as concentration. And it's basically doing the same thing, but with a 23 DC dexterity saving throw instead of strength. But it's still knocking things prone. I feel like this would only come up once the Earthquake goes down. Then they might think about using it. Otherwise, just keep swinging that maul, buddy.
Right, and if they are fighting with allies, if this thing's by itself, it's basically useless. 2 actions to knock everything prone, not on your turn. So at best, you will get 1 more attack off before everyone stands up, really.
Right.
Well, I guess no, you could kind of be smart about it and time it up for the end of initiative. And then, let's say like this thing's at the top of initiative or whatever. After the last person goes, doing this, and then it's your turn.
Yeah, you're right. Well, one thing I think that's kind of important is that we've talked about this before, but when you get to intelligence levels of this magnitude, it's very difficult as a DM to play as smart as this thing should, because it has 21 intelligence. It's going to fight the best way it can, but I'm not a 21 intelligence human at all.
So I'll argue against that, because while it's intelligent, it is in the flavor said that they do not believe they can die. So it might fight with some level of strategy, but first and foremost, it will fight the way it wants to fight. And it does not think that will end poorly, no matter what it does. So they're not trying to trick or optimize. Why would they need to optimize if they're the optimal being?
Yeah, but I think that would mean...
If they just swing the maul, it doesn't matter.
To me, that says that they just naturally know how to do that. They are just good at fighting to this extent, where it's not specifically them thinking and planning, but it's because they just know how to fight so well that it comes second nature. They know to use their earthquake first and then start swinging their maul and to fly 10 feet above somebody so that way they, can't hit them, but the Empyrean can.
Yeah, they have a 50-foot fly speed. We skimmed over that. I forgot about that.
I think that's like totally wrong. I think that the idea that they would avoid getting hit doesn't fit the character.
Okay, that's fair.
Well.
That's fine. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
That one, even Earthquake, I can see them like not seeing the use of that unless they're trying to destroy a city. They're like, why would I care about an earthquake? Because it's not them beating you with a maul.
I don't know. I feel like that's not giving them enough credit.
Yeah. I get the fly thing. I could absolutely see the Empyreans not wanting to do that cheesy thing where they hover 10 feet above so they can in the mole's reach, but not in most melee range. And
yeah, I will totally give you that.
Or just fly 600 feet up and rain bolts down.
Okay, that they might do, though.
Actually, I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, that's some
just kind of
shit.
Like screaming with eyes glowing. Just,
Right. So that's actually really cool and is a very great use of the bolt spell. Yeah, I want that. But to say that it's just going to ignore everything at its disposal just to kind of be a meathead ignores what the stat block is telling us. It's telling us that it's smart, it's wise, it's an amazing fighter. It's not just, it's arrogant, but it's not stupid.
Yeah, I'm with Jared on this one.
Haha, point in my favor. Write it down, somebody. Kevin's on my side and Will's a dummy.
So 2 people are wrong instead of 1. Got it. Oof. See how I turned that just right around? I don't know. I think that you are losing something, especially if you try. It's tough because I think this is a good introduction to gods, and I think this is a lot of people just like leave all mythology on the table when they transport themselves to magical fantasy realms. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had in those stories, especially with the failures of the gods. And I think this is a perfect character to show that kind of like, they're better than you, but that can be a weakness.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I think I actually see where you're going with this, and I think it ties into the role-playing side of it and how you use this as a DM. Not all Empyreans are the same. They have different reasons why they're where they're at and why your party might be fighting them. So I could definitely see there being a more arrogant Empyrean who is 100% just ignoring any of its... It just thinks that it is the... God's gift, because I guess it is officially a God's gift, but and ignoring its earthquakes or its whatever, it's not trying to cheese it. It just knows that it can just run in there and it can swing its maul and it doesn't need to do anything else. And the idea of it needing to do anything else is almost offensive to it. Whereas I think there's the other side where you might have an Empyrean who's extremely intelligent and has none of that hubris and just wants to, fight the best way possible because it knows it's smart and it knows it can fight to the best of its ability and win any fight without much thought.
Yeah.
So whatever fits your what you're trying to do as a DM.
Yeah.
They're a good like meat and potatoes character too, because they're not complicated. For this challenge rating, they're not the most simple, but they're pretty close. There's not a lot going on, so you've just got this very, very impressive stat block to throw at people.
Right, and some nice spells, but yeah, no, you're right. They're not like, you're not going to be using a spell every single turn. Your bread and butter is going to be swinging them all and dealing 31 damage and stunning people.
And bolting people that are out of range.
All right, so then that brings me to the role-playing side of things, because the big question is how the heck do you throw one of these into your campaign? They're generally good creatures. It even says on the stat block, 75% chaotic good and then 25% neutral evil. It's not very often you see a broken out alignment chart, but there's reasons for it. But the first thing that they have, I think, is a great reason why a higher level party might run into these things as like a smaller encounter or smaller arc. They have this manifest emotion where an Empyrean can experience deity-like fits of serenity or rage, and it can affect the entire landscape and environment around them. So it says when an Empyrean's unhappy, clouds might cry tears of salt water, wildflowers in surrounding meadows might wilt, dead fish might wash ashore, nearby forest might lose leaves from its trees, and that's the type of stuff that ruins human settlements or humanoid settlements. So I could very easily see a group of adventurers coming through a town and it's like, hey, why is everybody all sad? And also, why are the clouds crying? Or even the party seeing that first, just while traveling across the land. They notice a blight on the land and they go and investigate, or somebody asks them to go investigate and find that it's one of these Empyreans who's throwing a fit for some reason.
Right. And I think that's a great way as the stepping stone from transitioning your level 17, level 18 party from dealing with the material world to the other planes, the realms of the gods and devils. Because it's a classic plot hook. There's this issue on the kingdom, and make it kingdom scale so it still attracts them. And maybe even give them some red herrings. We think there might be this evil wizard out there that's doing this or something. You go and find it's this Empyrean, and then give the players a lot of agency on how they want to handle it. And you could really spin and weave this into this really much bigger story. Why is the Empyrean here and in a bad mood? Well, they were kicked out of their plane. Maybe they were framed. Maybe they did something that the gods deemed unworthy and kicked them out. And so if you want to stop it, they kind of have this longer, greater quest for you to go try and clear their name or help them redeem themselves, and that obviously can spin into this crazy stuff. Alternatively, maybe they just say, nah, screw this, we're just going to attack you. Once you attack them, a bunch of devils pop in to existence and fight with the Empyrean, because they kind of saw this as this vulnerable, really powerful titan. And so then these devils fight with the Empyrean, and even if the party's going to win or whatever, the Empyrean just plane shifts away down to a lower plane because they saw the devils came to its rescue, and now you have this corrupt Empyrean, which now becomes this recurring villain that needs to be dealt with. Yeah,
that's pretty good too. And it does specifically mention that that's where the 25% neutral evil comes from, is Empyreans who have maybe spent a little too much time in the lower planes and have become corrupted or cursed by evil gods. And it basically says that they will then go to the material plane because they can't survive on the upper planes after that corruption. And what I love is that last little line there, where it can rule over a kingdom of mortals as an indomitable tyrant. Now, that right there,
yeah, I like
that's
that
a campaign builder.
Yeah.
So that's what you just said, Kevin. It's a fantastic way to set it up. If you want them to come in at a very different point, just imagine as a PC where you go into a new kingdom for whatever reason, and the king requests a court with you, and your PCs show up, and it's just this absolutely gigantic Empyrean who, as stated, is a tyrant. Everybody is unhappy. However you want to spin it and get your players interested, it's now their job to take this guy down.
Right.
Which I think is a great way to bring in the minions that we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah. Or even just have it happen to your players' kingdoms, their home.
Sure.
And all that gets taken over, and that's what spurs them to adventure. They're a bunch of level 2s, and they don't stand a fucking chance.
Right.
But they could start working towards it, and
right. And I think that
knowing that's the ultimate showdown at the end with this corrupt Empyrean.
Definitely. And I think that, this with some minions would be a very memorable campaign ender. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
Without the minions, as we have discussed, it is kind of just doing a lot of smacking. So it'll do the damage, but I don't think it'll be very memorable. But you throw on a royal guard and some, the court wizard or whatever, it's going to be pretty tough. Your party's going to need to be very well prepared, well allied, everything. So I could very easily see that being a cool way to bring in the Empyreans.
For sure, yeah.
You know who'd be a great court wizard for an Empyrean tyrant? The Nagpa.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I could even see the Nagpa being the one that talks in Empyrean and to go visit into the lower planes and getting corrupted.
Oh my god.
No, dude, it's cool. You'll love it. There's beer, there's chicks, and then 200 years later, he's ruling over a kingdom with an iron fist.
Oh, and then the Nagpa is what seeks out your party, seeing their potential, and unites them and sets them on the path to get strong enough to defeat it, knowing that the ensuing battle will probably destroy the kingdom. And then the Nagpa could swoop in and
Yeah, that's
thing.
actually the hard part. Because I don't love that. That seems like a lot of work for the Nagpa to
it's
build.
what they do.
I know. Is it though? Is that how they do it? They build up an Empyrean. Why wouldn't they just tell the Empyrean, convince them to just destroy the entire society?
They're opportunists. I imagine the Nagpas have multiple threads going. A bunch of different, a lot of different buns cooking in different ovens. They're just opportunists.
I mean, they've got unlimited time.
Yeah, they got unlimited time, and they're working on all this other stuff. And as they're going down, working, all right, we're gonna start poisoning the king over here to make him mad. They come across this Empyrean who's just kind of a little distraught, and they then corrupt him a bit and just see where that goes. Keeps an eye on him.
So, and
300 years later comes to fruition.
Right, and that actually would be good because it would build up. It would probably, for at least a small period of time, propel the kingdom into a period of prosperity, as they would get all of the wisdom of somebody as intelligent and grand as an Empyrean. Even if they are evil, they're neutral evil. They're not let's just completely turn everything on its head evil. So there might be a lot of knowledge gained in that time period, especially through less than scrupulous means. So I could see the Nagpa actually setting all of that up, and then 300 years later being like, yeah, I think that one's been cooking long enough. Let's go ahead and convince an adventuring party to rise to the occasion and take down this entire regime.
Right. Oh man, and that's where you can kind of do the video game style, like that. It's the more modern day idea of RPGs and video games. If you have good endings and bad endings, depending on how you played it. Where if you play into the Nagpa's hands and you just get powerful enough and you just go and kill the Empyrean, the resulting battle and fallout destroys the kingdom, and the Nagpa gets their way. And even though the Empyrean's dead, there's a lot of death and destruction throughout that realm. But if you overcome what the Nagpa's trying to get you to do and you redeem the Empyrean, everybody's happy. The Empyrean realizes the error of their ways. They stick around to help fix stuff, install, rightful leadership. Then the Nagpa gets all pissy and doesn't get their kingdom destroyed.
Or you just find the Empyrean's dad and just tell him that, hey, your son's being a huge dick on the material plane. Could you just deal with him?
Seeing this out, that would be literally a god. I think they would know. I guess it doesn't really go into that. Why don't the gods intervene?
They're not omnipotent, and that would be the world's most insane persuasion check is convincing God to care about that.
The board can do it.
30. Well, fuck. I guess you got it.
So, okay, maybe convincing the gods most likely won't happen, but leave it open-ended. It's how your party wants to deal with it.
Yeah. I don't know. It could happen. I could see that where it's they're aware of it and they're just kind of this sort of grumpy indifference.
Right.
Yeah, my kid's fucking up, but it's still my kid. What am I going to do?
Right.
And then this powerful adventuring party pops up and really tries to convince them to doing the right thing, and this spurns off more quests and shit they need to do. But
right. And as you had mentioned earlier, that's a good introduction to that celestial level campaign style. Because once you get to that point, it's very difficult to throw goblins at the party. Very difficult.
Unless it's a dome-shaped room, specifically optimized for bows.
We're not doing Goblin Arena. Never. All right. And what else? What other ways? Because I think there's the first way we mentioned is a very short, I don't want to say random encounter. That's not the best way to put it, but something shorter, a short arc. It could be a random encounter if you're feeling absolutely crazy. Other side's more long-term campaign. Would this thing be used in any other capacity? I mean, is it going to be the minion of anyone besides somebody like a Nagpa?
It would be the minion of a celestial, beyond challenge ratings, essentially. That's about
a god.
it.
It would be a minion of a god.
Yeah.
Out of all of the Celestials, I was just pulling this up, the Empyrean is the highest.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
At least out of the monsters I have access to in D&D Beyond, which is most of them.
Yeah. You're not missing too many.
But I think this is one of those great kind of like just base stat blocks that you can kind of almost apply to Greek stories. You know, if you just look up some Greek mythology, you'll find out there's an absolute shitload of very complex, interesting stories filled with twists, turns, and moralities and things you might not have thought of. And you could really just steal, 2,000-year-old stories and throw an Empyrean on it and make your players go.
I bet those Greeks really wish they had Scabbard, am I right?
They didn't even have paper, man. They would have lost their minds. That's actually probably not. I think they did have paper.
No, everything was etched onto stone tablets.
All right, so that's all we have on the Empyrean. Before we move on, we received this weird message from someone who goes by Cinderblock Sally, and he claims to be some extra planar being that likes to talk about best ways for monsters to kill the party. Seems to be an advocate for the monsters, and he had quite a bit to say here about the Empyrean. We think this might be a mistake, but we're going to give him a shot. So, Cinder, have at it.
He said he'd give us Eldritch Blast.
Oh, shit. Okay, definitely. Cinderblock, have at it.
Salutations, Jared, Will, and Kevin, humans of Earth. I do appreciate you giving me space on your program to help those in need. Some of you know me, most do not. You may come to know me in time. Honestly, it is relevant. I'm not here for you. My name is Cinder Bloxley, cosmic zoologist, monster conservationist, and humbler of heroes. 'Tis my duty and my quest to aid all creatures in their struggle against the ever-encroaching calamity that is adventurers. Monsters of all shapes, sizes, and alignments, heed my words. I am here to help. Walk my path, and you may very well survive in this new age of heroism. Today, we speak to the children of the gods. Some of you may call them titans, but I and many others know them as Empyreans. Hello there, broodling of the divine. How are you? Probably not worried about being struck down by some mortals 1/5 your size. Why, I wouldn't be surprised if the possibility of defeat has never even crossed your cosmically overconfident, hyper-emotional mind. And therein lies one of your greatest weaknesses. Honestly, it's a bit cliché. Oh, I'm sure you have many a tale about wrestling storm giants into submission or throwing down with an abyssal horror or two. You've most likely won most every battle you've had in single combat. But, and this is a big but, this can lead to a level of independence that is detrimental to your survival and or your schemes. Sometimes the battle is more tricky than trading bashes back and forth, and an adventuring party is the trickiest combatant I have ever studied. No, I don't doubt your cleverness, in addition to your might, but even the shrewdest Orcfey need to remember the simple things sometimes. For example, numbers. Numbers matter. The best advice that I can give you is to raise yourself an army. There are few creatures in the cosmos better fit to bolster legions than you. And trust me, monsters and mortals alike will follow if you guide them. And yes, I know. About 3/4 of you are just going to follow in your parents' glorified footsteps, spending most of your days luxuriating in your celestial domains. It is always easier to do nothing in the face of injustice, isn't it? But some of you will look upon your divine heritage and turn your back. You will see the error in their ways and the foulness of men, and you will say this stops now. It is to you brave vindicators of the oppressed that I speak. Those willing to stand and defy the gods and mortals alike, abandoning archaic notions of good and evil, driven to lead monsters into a new age of prosperity and peace. Don't just be a champion, be a leader, be a symbol. Those you inspire may end up doing much more of the work than you anticipated. This may not be the advice you want, but this is the best way to succeed. Oh, and one more thing. If you are able to somehow wrangle a beholder and keep it alive, your inborn immunity to natural magical attacks, combined with the beholder's natural ability to nullify any and all magical weapons and other effects with a simple glance, can make you more or less invincible against the unprepared. Maybe just keep that one in your back pouch for emergencies. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you again, M&M, for bringing me onto your platform. My familiar has helped me set up some social media accounts. Find them if you like, and do be in touch. I love you.
All right, so that was weird, but extremely informative. So yeah, Empyreans, make sure to grab some minions because action economy is a thing. Great. I think that's all we have for the Empyrean. Any last thoughts on this one, Kevin, Will?
None from me.
All right, so let's move into our final segment of Ask Monsters and Multiclass.
Well, final segment of the episode, not the last segment of Ask Monsters and Multiclass.
Oh,
We'll
yeah,
keep
no,
doing
that is different.
That was
You were
confusing.
We're sick of your questions. Stop asking.
correct. The questions thing was a horrible idea. Oh my god. All right. No, it's not. If you do have questions, feel free to send them our way. And yeah, anything else that we have talked about, if you have any thoughts or opinions that you want to add on, make sure to send them our way. We're more than happy to continue the discussion. This is already a very long episode, so I imagine that there's more to cover that we probably missed. But with that, let's get into our question of the question of the week. I'm not going to call everything of the week. This is from user Wampastomped, and he says that I'm probably going to run out of the abyss for some friends. Did you pay attention to all of the survival aspects? What did you like about it? And, what did you kind of ignore? So, Kevin, you ran out of the abyss for us, I believe a year plus ago.
Something like that.
I think it was a year ago. We ended it. And we put a lot of thought into the survival aspects. So I'll let you start.
For sure, yeah. So I think this is also kind of a good question just to bridge to that in general, how we handle that in different ways too. Because usually when it comes to the survival stuff, we skip over it. We don't track food and water and carrying capacity and foraging for food, which in some senses kind of screws over various features, especially like for the ranger and things like that. But it's just not something we find interesting most of the time. Specifically though for Out of the Abyss, and then this could apply probably to a lot of different campaign styles, we felt it was really important to track that stuff heavily and make it a really big part of it. So a campaign like Out of the Abyss, especially the first half of it, it's a pretty dark campaign, and it's really built around this feeling of helplessness and being a sort of fish out of water. In that one specifically, you are in the Underdark, and you were, I guess you could be an Underdark Denzian, but it's probably better that no one was, and you got captured by Drow slavers and dragged to the Underdark, and you're trying to get out. And it is a foreign, harsh world that you do not understand. And with that, tracking the survival aspects became a huge part of that campaign. We actually got really, really strict on it. There's guidelines in all the various books and stuff about how much people need to eat and drink a day and how to go about finding it and the penalties if they don't. And that really added weight to this. You escape out into the Underdark with basically nothing, and you need to find your way out before starving to death. It added this... Yeah, except this weight to everything you're doing, this kind of shroud that hung over everything that added to that sort of oppression of that campaign. Without it,
right. If
traveling was like, oh, you just figure it out, just move on, whatever, I really think that campaign would have been lacking. And just to keep this more specific, because obviously everyone's not going to play Out of the Abyss, for any sort of heavy or kind of darker campaign like that, I think actually, sucking up and tracking that stuff becomes really important.
Yeah, and it wasn't too impossible to track by any means. We basically had like a pool of resources that we just said like, all right, this is how much food we have, this is how much water we have, and we just needed to, assign jobs basically while we were going along for foraging. What made it particularly difficult in Out of the Abyss was the fact that there were so many mouths to feed. We like actually had like 6 or 7 NPCs that were traveling along with us. And I think
who
that
are
was
not very good at foraging or
right. So they were definitely more of a hindrance than they were helping by any means. Now, with all of that said, and I 100% agree with everything that you did say, that it added a whole bunch to the earlier levels of Out of the Abyss and any type of survival campaign. We definitely hit a wall. We hit a point where we started having so much food and so much water that every time that we were foraging or doing anything, it was just to keep our numbers to a point that we were like good for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And around that point is when you ended up just giving us a bag of holding because you were like, I think the magic's worn off a little bit here.
right.
So I think there is a stopping point for it. I really loved it at first, but I just don't know if D&D is the right game to have it going on forever. Like when I'm level 15, I don't want to have to worry about food. That's like not that interesting.
I would say that's probably a very bad way to phrase it. I think like D&D 5th edition, especially the new attitudes coming into it and new player bases and stuff like that, have a lot to do with it. When you get to stuff like this, the best thing in my opinion to do is you've got to optimize systems. You can't make it into this slog of everybody at the table has to now do math more often than they want to. It really depends on your audience, especially in like older school systems. There was just so much to keep track of and so much math. It kind of attracted a certain kind of player base that was really, really into that kind of thing. So especially for people with player bases that may not be into that, I think there's a lot to be added with something like this. But you really have to look at the system and think, how can I make this impactful, make this make sense, but also make it optimized for my table?
Yeah.
And I think we got there pretty well. Just we got used to it, and you had all the numbers on hand that we needed.
Right.
But it did get kind of tiresome.
Yeah.
Even regardless.
Yeah, as you guys got more powerful, especially then as you guys started to reach different points of civilization and stuff in the Underdark, when you could resupply and stuff, that's when it started to fade away more. But early on, I think it had a lot of tension, created interesting choices, especially with Out of the Abyss and with the NPCs, the entourage you have with you. You know, if rolls start going real poorly and you're not finding much, there starts to become that in-character question of, all right, who's going without food?
Who are we going to eat?
Yeah, are we leaving people behind?
Right. And I think if it was going to be a bit more of a mainstay, I think we probably would have, I'm maybe speaking out of my ass here, but I think we probably would have nerfed the amount of food that you find. And this is just, it always comes down to the table. It's just very difficult with the pre-written rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide to, I guess, tweak it the same way that you can an encounter. Like if I'm running an encounter for my normal group, you guys, I know that a challenge rating 10 against you as level 8s is going to be not a big deal. Whereas if we flip that around and it's a group of new players and I throw a challenge rating 10 thing at them, it might be a huge problem. I think it kind of goes in that same mentality with foraging, where if we're looking at it from a group who can very quickly break down and optimize that to say we need exactly 2 people, on average we're going to get this much food and it'll never be a problem. For them, you almost need to find ways to make it a little harder. And it might be throwing in a attack in the middle of the night where a creature comes and steals your food. It's not attacking you, it's stealing your food or it's stealing your water or resources in some way. And ways to bump up that difficulty. It's not explicitly written into the rules provided, but there is a lot you can do still.
Yeah, I wish I would have done more of that, just kind of in hindsight. Did stuff to take away your food, or you guys had a lot of foragers to punish you more on that, where then you didn't have, maybe should have made you get lost more and drawed it out, or got ambushed more because you didn't have so many people looking for danger.
Right. Or like if we are ambushed, then we're separated because, we're foraging all around.
Right.
There's things you can do. I mean, that's the beauty of hindsight. I mean, that's not a new or hot take.
Right.
But there's always different things that when you think about it in the past, that's like, oh yeah, hey, we could have added a lot more to make that more interesting. But I think that for the time, for our first foray into it, I think it was great.
Yeah. But interesting enough, though, we didn't do it with the next campaign.
Yeah.
'Cause it just didn't really need it. I mean,
It didn't fit. It really. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you got to have a campaign where it fits.
Yeah, I think it's a great environmental hazard. You just have to be ready for it. There's a lot of prep work you got to do to be prepared to answer questions and do this stuff. So when you make this an environmental hazard, you have to go into it fully knowledgeable. But in day-to-day life, even in the harshest of mythical realms, even on the Forgotten Realms, there's plenty of food. It shouldn't be an issue.
Right.
And it feels weird if it becomes one.
Yeah.
right.
So maybe if you guys go somewhere where food isn't as plentiful, you're traversing a undiscovered cave system that is basically whatever I end up calling the Underdark. Maybe then we bring it in because it's important, and then Will over here is like, I've got good beer, it's fine, we don't need it. So maybe it doesn't work.
It's true.
But
I was gonna say actually, a Druid and the Out of the Abyss party would have ruined that.
yeah, pretty quickly. Well, I don't know. They could make 10 good berries a day. It still would have been like them using a resource. You're right. It would have ruined that aspect.
But at the same time, it's really harsh to say ruined that aspect. It's a thing they can do, and there's a reason they can do it. It's a mechanic. Yeah,
No, you're right. And
it would have. The dungeon master couldn't screw the party anymore.
so it's bad game design.
My players won't die. What's wrong with this game?
But no, I mean, I think it's something that you can bring in when appropriate. It doesn't need to be your entire campaign all the time. As we've discussed, even when you guys are about to travel for 4 or 5 days, it's like, oh, well, how much food do we need? It's like, oh, well, this many rations. And it's like, okay, well, I buy that many rations. And yes, maybe one of these times I can have something come and steal your food. And from there, it's like, ooh, you guys are out of food and you have to deal with that. Okay, I mean, it'll probably just be going over to good berries. But maybe that works for your group, whoever you are, listener, where you don't have somebody with good berry. And that's something that you want to try out as like a specific hindrance for one travel. I think there are times for it. And it can be fun, forcing people to forage and number track for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I know might just only be specific to Out of the Abyss, but like travel times of that were crazy.
Yeah.
Like 30 to 60 days between civilizations and villages and stuff like that. And rules as written, that calls for foraging rolls and the random encounter rolls every single day. I ended up chunking them up into 5-day segments. One roll of foraging, everything covered 5 days. So just something to consider to make that a little less ridiculous and tedious.
Yeah. People like rolling, but not that much.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I didn't do this for this reason, but if there was like a Druid of Goodberry, the Arcana Variant Rule, we talked about this a few episodes back, would have taken care of it, where while traveling and stuff, we basically use the gritty realism, where to get a long rest you need a week, which means you're not getting your spell slots back for Goodberry every single night. And when it's like 60 days of travel, it'll get you through a little bit, especially when you got like the big entourage. Basically, I think there's probably about 10 of you traveling through the Underdark. Yeah. 4 party members, 6 NPCs. And then this starts at level 1, so you only got a couple spell slots anyway. So Goodberry will help a little bit, but not enough.
Basically, all things are fixed by gritty realism on travel. Most everything.
Yeah. What episode was that on? I don't know. Just go listen back to all our past episodes. You'll find it. It was a recent one.
Yeah.
No complaining. You've got 100 hours. I guarantee it.
All right. Well, I think that's everything from me. You guys got anything else on that?
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Then, if you haven't yet, once again, make sure just to subscribe to us wherever you can. If you have any additional thoughts as well on anything we talked about today, find us on Twitter, find us on our subreddit. We love talking about this stuff further out. Bring it on. And Kevin,
Thanks for listening.
Next time on Monsters and Multiverse.
join us next time as we have special guests from the Worldforge pod. We're going to discuss the Artificer Monk multiclass and the Shadow from the Monster Man.